I've got camera, and screen recording going, and that's how you know this is gonna be good. Pretend like you paid me $1,000 to show you this. In fact, I'm hoping that by the end of watching this video and applying it, it's worth much more than that. Here is what I've been up to. I've created a method called the FIIRE Method for understanding the YouTube algorithm and growing your channel like a fire. I've been applying this process piece by piece to help creators like these, and I am finally ready to share this method with you today. Howdy everyone, Nate here. Let's set your channel on fire. As you can see on my screen right here, I've created a template, both digital and physical, that you can use to follow along with this video. It's free and I put a lot of effort into making it as usable as possible for you. So go ahead and get that with the link below and let's jump right in. I want you to picture your channel and the content you're producing and publishing on your channel like a campfire, with the goal of attracting your audience to your content so that they can enjoy the s'mores or whatever you're sharing around your campfire. And for my international audience, if you ever come visit, hit me up and we're gonna enjoy some s'mores together because they're delicious. So what we need is a process to choose what kinds of content to put together to best serve your audience and, of course, by extension, the algorithm. Now, it's good to note here that in this algorithm video, you're not going to hear me say the word YouTube algorithm very much. You will hear me talk about how it works and, more importantly, how to structure your content so that it does do well with the algorithm. All right, so the first step you're going to apply here is finding your campground, starting off with identifying where you want to play. Campground is the word I'm using in this analogy to be the equivalent of your niche or your playing field, the area that you are producing content for with your channel. If you're watching this video, there's a very high likelihood that you've already identified, at least on a surface level, where you're going to set up your campfire. This first part can look as simple as identifying I want to build a channel about growing a green lawn. Or to use an example from this channel you're watching right now, I would say this channel is for founders to build organic online audiences on YouTube. But we're not done with this first step, the F in the FIIRE method, because a key component that is oft overlooked by many creators and businesses alike is you need to understand your campground really well. What we're going to do right now is take a tour of the campground that you are looking to build a campfire in. So go up here to this tab, the Campground Niche tab, and what you see right here are the different channels that you're going to be identifying in your niche and understanding things about them, with the channels that you want to keep the closest eye on being marked as urgent priority all the way down to low priority. But we're going to come back to this in a moment. What you and I are doing while we're touring our niche on YouTube is we're exploring the content that's already out there. We're identifying other channels that are playing in our space. We're looking at their campfires to see both what kinds of content they're producing for that fire and what kinds of audience they're attracting around that fire. We're also looking at making friends with other channel owners and spending time with the crowds that they attract. And with that, we want to understand why that audience likes to spend time around that campfire. Why do they enjoy watching that channel creator's content? What are they getting out of it and what aren't they getting out of it? For an example of what that looks like on this channel that you're watching right now, I have to give a shout out to Marcus Jones, Nick Nimmin, and many others in the space that have been super awesome to collaborate and have conversations with, as well as tools like vidIQ, ClickUp, and others. The very best possible result you can have if you tour your campground effectively is that you are connected with other players in your space. You know about their audiences and you understand how they are creating their content. And you understand why those other audiences are enjoying that content. In fact, the further you go into this, the more well-known you are, and it actually creates a residual effect where you become a known name in your campground or in your niche. I'm going to include another video where I go more in depth on assessing your competition that you can watch after this. But if you're following along in the template here, you may be interested as to what this over here is about. What the heck are these sparks, tinder, kindling, and logs? Well, what you're going to be doing as you're touring your campground is writing down what these dynamics are for each of the channels that you pull up. Now, what do these mean? Well, I'm glad you asked, and that brings us to the next step. The first I in FIIRE stands for identifying your sparks. Now, sparks is just a simple way to remember the things that ignite your content, the things that make your content take fire and stand out and be memorable in your niche. In fact, I'm gonna show you. If you go to this tab right here called Fuel, every fire needs fuel in order to burn, and the fuel needs a spark in order to start burning. So what I've done here, and what you're going to do as you're watching this, is start inserting some examples of these things for yourself. So I put here, thing you're passionate about, thing you're really good at, thing you're experienced at, or unique angles or hot takes you have. Things that as you're touring your campground, you look around and you say, you know what, no one else is looking at it this way. Or I actually disagree with this, this, and this that the other creators are saying. That's an example of a hot take you would have, and you would insert it right here by clicking Add Task down here. Now here is where it gets very interesting, because of course we're going to go on and talk about the Tinder and the Kindling and the logs, etc. But with Sparks specifically, I have seen many creators try to rely almost entirely on Sparks and maybe a couple of other types of content in order to grow their channel. But the reality is, if you only rely on these sparks or these things that are unique about you and the content you're bringing to the table, it can be extremely hard to grow because people in the campground don't know that they want your fire yet. Nothing's taking. They don't know that they like your kind of content yet. And on the flip side, if you don't have any sparks or unique things about your content, it's really hard to be memorable, which means they watch your video and then they move on. You're forgettable. You don't build a core audience. So I know you're dying to know what the Tinder, Kindling, and logs are. And don't you worry. We're going to get to that here in a moment. First, however, I want you to take action right now. Seriously, right now, and fill this out. Just write down some things that you're passionate about, you're good at, you're experienced at, or unique angles or hot takes you have. Even if you haven't done an in-depth tour yet of your niche, just write some stuff down here because it will make the rest of this make much more sense. Let me give you a concrete example of this channel you're watching right now. I found that a thing that I'm good at is helping founders build organic audiences. And I've also found that I'm passionate about generating traffic for businesses and creators. And I help people do this by identifying specifically what makes their stuff memorable, like this, like what I'm doing right now, and take that traffic generation capability and make it in-house so it runs perpetually even when I'm not there. In fact, for another real-world example, I've been working with a client, Dylan, not that long. We've only published a very few videos, and realistically, we haven't even gotten very many views yet. However, because of how we structured the campfire, all the content on the channel, Dylan has already been able to generate over $55,000 in revenue. That fires me up, no pun intended. So we're on to the action of this identifying sparks step in the FIRE method here. What I want you to do is start filling in these things in the template. Identify those sparks within you and in the content you want to create. And if you want to take this to the next level, go ahead and ask a trusted person in your life to just show them what you have done and say, hey, this is what I have. What do you think? How well does this describe me? How excited do I seem when I'm sharing this with you? Now we are on to the next I in FIRE. FIRE. The second I stands for insert fuel, and you can replace the word fuel with content. Now this concept is one of the most revolutionary things about this video. I have never seen it described this way elsewhere on YouTube. I have broken down the different types of content you can publish on your channel into 3 categories: Tinder, Kindling, and logs. Now, if you've ever built a campfire, you can see where this is going, but let me explain in case you haven't. When you build a campfire, it typically starts with you putting down tinder or smaller pieces of wood or highly flammable items that can light quickly, that then catch the kindling on fire, which are slightly larger pieces of wood, that then generate enough heat to light the logs on fire, which are the large pieces of wood that keep your fire going and generating heat for all the people enjoying the s'mores around your campfire for a long time. Now, each of those 3 things represents a category of content that you can put on your channel, and they accomplish different purposes. Let's start with the Tinder. Tinder content is the type of content that is intended to get a lot of attention quickly. So while you're following along with the template here, you'll see this column right here of Tinder content, and I put some examples in here. News items, current trends in your niche, or fresh, interesting ideas your audience would want. When I shared those with you just now, did you have some ideas come to mind? I hope you did. And if you didn't, well, take a moment, pause the video for a moment, and think of anything in your niche, your specific channel, that could fit under those categories. All right, so you've thought of those things. Go ahead and hit Add Task and put them in right now. This is awesome. Let me give you an example of another client I've been working with. We spent months with really low views trying a variety of different types of content. And we've realized in retrospect that we were trying to create videos that were sparks, but not Tinder. They were vlog style videos that were, here's what's interesting about my life and let me share some personal stories with you. But what we were in effect doing was trying to light a fire without any Tinder or other types of content that would actually make it catch and attract new audience. That's why the important distinction on this item right here is fresh, interesting ideas your audience would want, meaning they're aware that they would be interested in it. It's not a totally new idea. So we've laid down some Tinder fuel. Now let's move on to the kindling. Kindling is where a lot lot of channels spend most of their time with their content, and rightly so. It's kind of a happy medium between the fast burn, fast attention of Tinder and the difficulty of log videos, which we'll get to here in a moment. Kindling content looks like this: core library content in your niche, small to mid-sized concepts in your niche, follow-ups on Tinder videos. If you have a Tinder video that does very well, you can do a follow-up that's a kindling video, or a single happening or story. Now remember, these are just pointers to point you in the right direction of what types of videos to put in this category. We'll be getting to these 3 per 3 months and 6 per 3 months, these little tags here in a moment. But first I want you to identify some of these kindling videos and write them in here. Kindling videos are most likely to be the videos that as you are touring your niche, you see them across a lot of different channels, like a similar theme across a lot of different channels. That's a good indicator that it's one of these. For an example of a kindling video on this channel, I'm going to put another video here that you can watch after this just to see a demonstration of what it looks like. And also an example of another client I worked with a while back. We ended up needing to stop for a while because some personal business issues came up. But the first video we published after we started working together was a kindling video that included a lot of Tinder elements in it. Why? Because it was a mid-sized concept video showcasing how to do something in the niche, but that concept was a brand new software that had just released, therefore the Tinder aspect. Okay, so we've got the kindling. Let's move on to log content. These are the types of videos that are big topics or long length videos, or they can be evergreen topics, the types of videos that perform well in search for a long period of time. They can also include tutorials or guides or full interviews or podcasts. All right, and if you want an example of a log style of video, well, this video you're watching right now is a log style of video. For action on all 4 of these things, I want you to write down the categories that you're going to do on repeat for your channel. So as an example, on Tinder, you could say updating on the latest new lawn care products. That would be a category that I would put in right here. So I know that is one of my Tinder items that I come back to again and again on my channel. And you do the same thing with the other categories so that when you go over here to the dashboard, you have this pane right here of content by type, and it gives you a breakdown of the different types of content that you're going to be publishing consistently on your channel or putting in your campfire. So if I go here and I click or tap the logs, it will then pull up and I know these are the log category videos that I'm doing on my channel. And I can do the same with these other categories of content on my channel. Different channels, including your channel, are going to have a different mix of these content categories. Let's say your channel is heavily focused on news and trends. You're going to have a much higher ratio of Tinder style of videos. And contrast that with the opposite extreme. Let's say you like to publish a really big video only once a month. It would go to show that your ratio of log videos versus the other ones would be much higher in that case. Okay, it's time to move on to the R in the FIRE method. The R stands for ignite or reignite the fire. What we've done up to this point is identify the different parts that we're going to put in our content campfire. And for most channels, that looks like a balanced combination of these 4 things. Now it is time to put it into action. It's time to ignite the fire or reignite it by putting these things into practice. And this is where you can identify 2 things. One is how often am I going to publish this type of content? You'll notice these tags that I put on each of these categories. You are able to go in and select a tag. Let's say this one, I'm going to do 3 of these for every 3 months. So a single happening or story, I'm planning on publishing 3 pieces of content for every 3 months that pass on my channel of this category. Or let's say full interviews or podcasts. This one's not going to happen as much. So this is 1 for every 3 months. That means I'm going to do a full interview or podcast about once every 3 months on my channel. You're able to go in and change any of these tags to fit your specific needs. But what this does is if you go to your dashboard, you have this handy publish frequency battery indicator here where I can go in and see how often am I publishing each of these different types of content. So this one, 3 per 3 months, I've got 5 of them. So if I click on it, voila, I see that these are the categories that I'm publishing this often on my channel. And what does that do for me? It keeps me on track for the campfire that I've said I am going to build with my content. The second thing you're going to be doing when you're reigniting the fire here is identifying specifically why you're fire. Now I realize I could change this to why you are fire, and that would have had a totally different meaning. But what you're identifying here is why your audience wants to gather around your campfire. And I put an example here. Let's say your channel is about comfort healing and a feeling of belonging. It also shares fictional stories that help people heal, and it also does so in a soothing voice with soothing visuals. That is a really good reason for people to gather around your campfire or your channel. In fact, let me show you a client of mine that has done this very well. This is Samantha Boyer, who does content as self-described as welcome to the coziest corner of the internet, where we escape into magical stories. What Samantha has done is combined beautiful artistry, music, and fictional storytelling of a place called Haven Hollow to share stories and provide helpfulness, healing, and comfort for people. And since working together, we've seen some phenomenal results, both in terms of spread by identifying the campfire even clearer for the audience, but also in terms of what we offer around the campfire as people are coming to this content, what's being offered to help them even further or have a better experience. You'll remember earlier, I partially jokingly mentioned the s'mores thing. The reality is, when you invite people to experience your content, if you're a business, for example, and you already have a value proposition, what you offer when they come to your fire is that value proposition. It's your pizza, it's your s'mores in this example. Samantha and I worked on these offers for the audience that were arriving at the content, and we've seen some phenomenal results already and continue to see those results. In fact, some of the stuff we did I think was so well targeted for the audience that I think the upside is significantly further than what we've even reached yet. It just fires me up. I'm super excited by this kind of thing. You know, I gotta say it, I didn't actually put any fancy thing up on screen or anything on my piece of paper here to do that, so I'm just gonna say, if this video is being helpful and you're following along and you're finding value in it, I'd love if you would boop the like button on it so that it can spread to more people. Thank you. Now we are on to the E in the FIRE method. The E stands for expand the heat. Up to this point, I have spoken very little about the YouTube algorithm's role in all of this. Here is where we talk about what the algorithm does for you. For a fire to burn, it needs three things. It needs fuel, it needs heat, and it needs oxygen. The fuel is what you have direct control over. It's the content we've been identifying thus far in this video. The heat starts with you and your spark, the passion and the energy that you bring to your content. Which, by the way, those unique angles and that unique passion has to be maintained for a period of time in order to ignite your content. Because sometimes you might have a wet log. I need to say that again. Oh, okay. Because sometimes the wood for your fire might be wet, meaning you might not be that good at making videos yet. But if you apply heat for enough time over extended pieces of content, those pieces of content, or that tinder, kindling, or log, is going to get better. It's going to get drier. It's going to catch fire more easily. And with the heat here, once something has caught fire, it is much, much easier to keep that fire going. And that, in a nutshell, is why it is so difficult in the beginning for most YouTube creators. Which brings us to the third element that a fire needs, or a channel needs, in order to grow. Oxygen, and that is what the YouTube algorithm provides. The YouTube algorithm's job is to provide those little gusts of wind and oxygen that allow your tinder to catch fire. But I want you to think of it this way. Within a campground, the oxygen is somewhat limited because there are a lot of campfires that are also using oxygen. The algorithm's influence is everywhere, but for a small fire, it can be a little bit more limited while it waits for you to provide the heat and the fuel sufficient to build a fire. And sometimes when you start publishing, that fire is very small and maybe can't even be seen above the top of the fire pit. At the beginning, your fire may only be visible to the people closest to your specific niche, the specific type of audience that you're trying to attract. But as it grows, your content becomes more and more visible to a larger audience of people. That is what the algorithm does for you. It can also send gusts of wind that either make your fire all of a sudden explode because you had just the right piece of content, or put your fire out if you don't know how to handle a viral video. But we can make an entire video just about that concept. More on that in the future, probably. Now, there are a few more definitions that help this really land. When you light a fire, the flames of the fire are attention. Attention is the thing that gets your content seen. It's the flames of the fire that allows people in the campground to see it from further away and be interested in it. However, what do flames do? They also consume the fuel, which is why an ongoing combination of these different content categories is important for growing the channel, because you got to keep feeding the fire. The other definition I want to land here is that of heat as being separate than flames. The heat in the fire of your content is the equivalent of attention from a core audience. If you have an awesome core audience, it keeps things warm and allows whatever types of fuel content that you put on your fire to catch fire more easily. This is one of the reasons why, from an algorithm standpoint, if you already have an existing audience, you have a massive advantage because there's more residual heat already there to consume your content or catch it on fire more quickly. And this is why, for businesses that want constant warm leads, no pun intended, it's really important to focus on building the organic audience underlying all the content that they're publishing, not just sending paid traffic to individual pieces of content. And there was one more thing with the campground here. Now that we know what the different fuel types are, as you're touring your niche and you're looking at the different channels in your niche, you can put the name here and then a link to the channel, but then you can identify and put in these text boxes here what their sparks are, what their Tinder is, their kindling, and their logs. What kinds of content they're publishing on their channel. Fill out each of these items to have a mini profile of what their campfire is. And once you do that and you go back to your dashboard here, you have a visual of which channels to pay the most attention to, from urgent, high, normal, and low. And again, if you click through on these, you can get a list of all of the channels that you have labeled as urgent or the highest priority to pay attention to the lowest here. It's just a nice way to keep a profile of where they are at. So for action here, as you're expanding the heat of your campfire, what you are doing is you are iterating. You are testing different combinations of content categories. You're emphasizing certain sparks over other sparks with your content. And you're also getting additional help when you need that, which is why I provided the Radical Creators group to give you this template, as well as additional value and projects that I am creating to help your business and your content, which is something I'm sure you would benefit from, right? So go ahead and join the group with the link I provided in the pinned comment and the description on this video. And let's get going, let's get applying this and catching your channel on fire. Thank you for watching.
Light 'em up, burn it high, YouTube thriller. Heat rises, ignite, no filler. Haters watching, on low, been a killer in the zone, on the net, real head spiller.